In the bold and the beautiful, danger rarely comes from the obvious threat. It comes from restraint pushed to hard, from love expressed as control, and from moral choices that feel noble in the moment but rot quietly in the aftermath. The latest previews make one thing unmistakably clear. Steffy Forrester is preparing for war not against a visible enemy, but against possibility itself. She is determined to stop Taylor Hayes from drifting anywhere near the man forever branded as Sheila's husband, because Steffy believes correctly that this path leads only to devastation. Yet, what Steffy fails to account for is the paradox at the heart of protection. The harder a boundary is enforced, the more violently it invites rebellion. Steffy's fear is not theoretical, it is built on scars. She has watched Sheila Carter infiltrate lives with patience that borders on artistry, dismantling families not through brute force, but through psychological erosion. Steffy understands that Sheila does not need to chase chaos. Chaos comes to her when people try to outrun their own impulses. From Steffy's perspective, Taylor's growing proximity to Deacon Sharp is not a coincidence, it is a fault line. And fault lines do not announce when they are about to rupture. So Steffy does what she has always done when danger threatens her family. She takes control. Her warnings are firm, urgent, and absolute. She frames them as protection, as maternal instinct turned outward, as a daughter's right to shield the woman who raised her from repeating old mistakes. Steffy does not equivocate. She does not soften the message. Deacon, she insists, is radioactive not because he is inherently evil, but because his orbit intersects with Sheila's. To Steffy, that alone is disqualifying. She has learned the hard way that intent does not neutralize proximity. You do not have to invite Sheila into your life for her to enter it. You only have to stand still long enough for her to notice you are there. But Taylor hears something different beneath Steffy's urgency. She hears judgment. She hears infantilization. She hears the implication that she cannot be trusted with her own choices. For a woman who has spent her life analyzing autonomy, trauma, and resilience, this is intolerable. Taylor does not see herself as reckless. She sees herself as compassionate. She believes she can distinguish danger from projection, growth from regression. And the more Steffy forbids, the more Taylor's resolve hardens, not because she wants Deacon, but because she refuses to live under the assumption that her past mistakes permanently disqualify her from future discernment. That is the first crack Sheila needs, and Sheila does not even have to touch it. Sheila's brilliance has always been in stillness. While others argue, forbid, and spiral, Sheila waits. She understands that panic accelerates error and that moral certainty breeds blind spots. She does not confront Taylor. She does not threaten Steffy. She allows others to speak for her, to construct her image through fear and memory. In doing so, she becomes a mirror rather than an aggressor, reflecting back the instability of those who claim to oppose her. As Steffy tightens the rules, Taylor grows more impulsive not because she is unaware of risk, but because she resents being managed by it. She begins to test boundaries subtly, then overtly. A conversation held too long, a meeting justified as professional curiosity, a defensive Deacon framed as fairness rather than attraction. Each step feels small, rational, defensible. Each step also moves her deeper into a narrative Sheila has mastered. The story of a woman who insists she is in control right up until the moment control collapses. Deacon, caught between redemption and reputation, feels the pressure acutely. He wants to be better. He has truly worked to prove that his past does not define his present. Yet, every time Taylor draws closer, the weight of Sheila's shadow drags him backward. He fears that no amount of decency will ever outrun the narrative attached to his name. The irony is cruel. The more Deacon tries to act honorably, the more he becomes vulnerable. Honesty, in this world, is not armor. It is exposure. And Sheila sees it all. She watches Deacon's fear flicker behind his restraint. She observes Taylor's defiance sharpening into something less thoughtful and more reactive. She senses Steffy's desperation escalating into rigidity. Sheila does not need to manipulate directly because everyone else is doing the work for her. They are revealing their weak points in real time, broadcasting them through choices made under emotional duress. Sheila understands that the most effective traps are those built by the victims themselves. The darkest twist does not arrive as an act of violence or betrayal. It arrives as a decision framed as mercy. Someone driven by love, guilt, or responsibility chooses to sacrifice their own reputation to protect another. The choice feels noble, even necessary. A lie told to shield someone from harm. A confession made to divert suspicion. A public admission designed to end speculation and preserve peace. In the moment, it appears humane. In reality, it is catastrophic, because Sheila thrives on sacrifices. When someone willingly stains themselves for love, Sheila does not have to destroy them. She only has to document them. The moment a reputation cracks, especially by choice, it becomes malleable. A person who has already accepted blame can be guided toward accepting more. A story told once can be retold with sharper edges. And a protector who steps into the line of fire becomes the easiest target of all. Steffi senses this danger too late. She recognizes, with a chill that cuts through her certainty, that the very act of shielding Taylor may have pushed her toward the kind of impulsive martyrdom Sheila exploits best. Taylor, believing she is acting from empathy rather than fear, underestimates how quickly compassion can be reframed as instability. Deacon, attempting to prove he is not the man the world insists he is, risks confirming every suspicion by absorbing blame that was never his alone. And Sheila does nothing. She stands still, visible but untouchable, allowing the narrative to crystallize around the sacrifice made in her shadow. The city begins to whisper not about Sheila's threat, but about the person who lost control, who confessed, who acted out of desperation. The question shifts, subtly but decisively, away from the true architect of chaos and toward the person who tried to stop it by offering themselves up. This is the most devastating truth Steffi must face. Sometimes the worst outcome is not caused by ignoring danger, but by confronting it the wrong way, by mistaking control for protection, by believing that love can be enforced without consequence. As the fallout unfolds, relationships fracture not through explosive conflict, but through exhaustion. Taylor is left questioning whether her autonomy was ever real or merely reactive. Deacon is forced to confront the possibility that redemption in this world may require more than good behavior. It may require surviving the stories others insist on telling about you. Steffi is haunted by the realization that her certainty, once her greatest strength, may have become the lever Sheila needed all along. And Sheila? She remains exactly where she wants to be. Unchallenged, unexposed, and newly surrounded by evidence that her enemies are capable of destroying themselves without her lifting a finger. In The Bold and the Beautiful, the most terrifying villain is not the one who attacks, but the one who waits. The twist promised by the previews is not simply dark, it is enduring. It asks whether morality can survive in a landscape where goodness is punished, restraint is weaponized, and sacrifice becomes proof of guilt. And as the characters reel from a choice that felt humane but proved fatal, one question lingers with devastating clarity. When love becomes the bait, who can ever be truly safe from the trap? In The Bold and the Beautiful, desire is rarely born from love alone. More often, it grows out of denial, rivalry, and the unbearable itch of wanting what feels forbidden. And if there is one truth longtime viewers have learned about Brooke Logan, it is this: Brooke does not simply want what she wants what she cannot have. The unattainable has always been her most dangerous temptation, not because she is weak, but because she is wired to measure her worth against resistance. When something stands just out of reach, Brooke experiences it not as a boundary, but as a challenge to her identity. That instinct is about to collide violently with the most intimate rivalry of her life, her war with Katie Logan. The conflict between the Logan sisters has long simmered beneath the surface, disguised as concern, advice, and familial obligation. But now it has sharpened into something unmistakably hostile. Katie's decision to build her fashion brand under the Logan name is not, to Brooke, a business move. It is an act of usurpation. Brooke does not see a sister claiming her own future. She sees someone rewriting history, redistributing ownership of an identity Brooke believes she earned through decades of visibility, sacrifice, and global recognition. In Brooke's internal narrative, Logan is not communal. It is singular. It is hers. That belief poisons every interaction. Brooke cannot understand why Katie refuses to listen, why she will not accept what Brooke frames as wisdom earned through experience. From Brooke's perspective, Katie is making a catastrophic mistake not only by using the Logan name, but by doing so without deference, without permission, and without acknowledging who made that name powerful in the first place. The resentment that grows out of that perception is not passive. It is active, corrosive, and hungry for leverage. And leverage, Brooke knows, has always come in human form. Enter Bill Spencer. The rumors that begin to circulate do not suggest romance born of longing. They suggest strategy born of necessity. Brooke's growing closeness to Bill is not driven by a desire to abandon Ridge Forrester, nor by a sudden resurgence of unresolved passion. It is driven by something colder and more precise: disruption. Brooke understands that if she cannot stop Katie's brand directly, she can destabilize the emotional foundation beneath it. Bill is that foundation. This is not new territory for Brooke. History is littered with moments when she crossed lines she swore she would never cross, justified always by the same internal logic: survival. She has taken men from Katie before, not out of cruelty, but out of conviction that she deserved them more, or that circumstances demanded it. Each time, she told herself it was complicated, unavoidable, even necessary. Each time, the damage was rationalized as collateral. Now, the pattern threatens to repeat, not because Brooke wants Bill romantically, but because she needs him strategically. Brooke recognizes the quiet harmony that has formed between Katie and Bill as dangerous. That alliance stabilizes Katie emotionally, reinforces her confidence, and weakens Brooke's ability to undermine her sister's resolve. As long as Bill stands beside Katie, the Logan Project carries weight financially, legally, and symbolically. To fracture that unity would be to shake the entire structure. And Brooke has never been someone who waits for structures to collapse on their own. Her approach is insidious in its subtlety. There is no overt seduction, no dramatic declaration. Instead, there is familiarity, shared history, lingering conversations that stretch a beat too long, emotional intimacy framed as mutual concern. Brooke positions herself not as a rival, but as the one person who truly understands Bill's frustration, his anger, his sense of being used as a pawn in a family war he did not start. She offers empathy where Katie offers resolve. She offers validation where Katie demands accountability. The danger lies in plausibility. Brooke does not need Bill to fall in love with her. She only needs him to hesitate. A moment of doubt is enough. A crack in trust is enough. If Bill begins to question Katie's motives, or worse, begins to wonder whether he is being weaponized against the Logan family, Brooke's objective is already achieved. Harmony does not need to be destroyed. It only needs to be destabilized. For Brooke, this is not betrayal. It is correction. In her mind, Katie's refusal to abandon the Logan name is an unforgivable provocation. Brooke frames her own actions as defensive, even protective. She tells herself that she is preventing a greater harm, the dilution of a legacy she carried alone for decades. If Bill must be drawn closer to expose Katie's miscalculation, so be it. Brooke does not view this as stealing. She views it as reclaiming balance. Katie, however, feels the shift immediately. She senses the change in Bill before any words are spoken. The subtle distance, the guarded responses, the way conversations that once felt safe now feel evaluated. For Katie, the realization is devastating, not because she fears losing Bill romantically, but because she recognizes the familiar shape of Brooke's influence. She has lived this story before. She knows how it ends, with her portrayed as unreasonable, controlling, or naive, while Brooke emerges as the misunderstood heart caught between impossible loyalties. The cruelty of it is that Katie cannot fight back without confirming the narrative being built around her. If she confronts Brooke, she looks insecure. If she confronts Bill, she looks manipulative. Silence, meanwhile, allows the insinuations to deepen. Every option costs her something. The emotional strain begins to fracture her focus just as the Logan brand faces its most aggressive opposition. Brooke, Ridge, and institutional resistance converge at the precise moment Katie needs stability most. The timing is not accidental. Brooke's internal conflict, though rarely acknowledged, is real. She does not experience herself as a villain. She experiences herself as a woman defending the last uncontested territory of her identity. To Brooke, losing control of the Logan name feels like erasure, like being written out of a story she bled to author. That fear justifies almost anything. It blinds her to the possibility that Katie's success does not diminish her own. As Brooke grows closer to Bill, the city watches with a mix of anticipation and dread. Everyone remembers what Brooke is capable of when she believes she is cornered. Everyone remembers the damage she leaves behind, even when she insists she never meant to hurt anyone. The question is not whether Brooke could cross this line again, but whether she believes she has a choice. Bill, caught between clarity and confusion, begins to sense the manipulation even as he is pulled into it. He recognizes Brooke's patterns because he shares them. He knows how power disguises itself as concern, how intimacy can be leveraged without ever becoming physical. Yet he also knows Brooke well enough to understand that her pain is genuine. That sincerity complicates everything. It becomes harder to dismiss her warnings outright, harder to remain anchored when doubt is seated so carefully. The tragedy unfolding is not a love triangle, it is a war of identity disguised as intimacy. As the weeks progress, the tension does not explode. It tightens. Brooke edges closer. Katie grows more isolated. Bill becomes increasingly conflicted. Ridge watches with wary distance, aware that Brooke's actions may ignite consequences even he cannot control. The Logan name, once a shared inheritance, becomes a contested symbol heavy enough to crush relationships under its weight. What happens next is not inevitable, but it is dangerously plausible. Brooke does not need to win Bill's heart. She only needs to destabilize Katie's ground. And if history has taught viewers anything, it is that Brooke Logan has never required desire to justify destruction, only belief. Belief that she is right. Belief that she is owed. Belief that what she cannot have must be taken before someone else proves she never owned it at all. In The Bold and the Beautiful, the most catastrophic betrayals rarely begin with passion. They begin with resentment sharpened into resolve. And as Brooke Logan circles closer to Bill Spencer, the question looming over every scene is no longer whether she will cross the line, but whether anyone will stop her before history repeats itself, exactly as she swore it never would. In The Bold and the Beautiful, heartbreak is rarely quiet, and rejection is almost never clean. It leaves behind not only wounded pride, but a reshaped identity, a man or woman forced to confront the gap between who they believed themselves to be and how they are now seen. That gap is where the most dangerous transformations occur. For Carter Walton, that reckoning arrives not with rage or humiliation shouted across a room, but with something far more corrosive: clarity. The moment he realizes that love, no matter how sincerely offered, cannot be negotiated into existence. Carter's decision to step forward boldly, recklessly, publicly was never only about romance. It was about resolution. He had watched too many weddings unfold around him, had officiated to many vows for others, smiling through ceremonies that quietly reminded him of his own perpetual near misses. Each celebration sharpened the ache he tried to intellectualize away. He told himself patience was strength, that dignity lay in restraint. Yet patience, when stretched too far, mutates into desperation. And desperation convinces even the most rational people that a decisive act will redeem months of uncertainty. So Carter advanced, placing Daphne Rose into a moment where neutrality was impossible. His move was not crude, it was polished, emotionally articulate, framed as inevitability rather than demand. He believed because he needed to believe that Daphne would rise to meet him at the same emotional tempo. That her silence, her careful distance, was not reluctance but timing. Carter mistook composure for restraint, curiosity for commitment, politeness for promise. Daphne's response shattered that illusion. She did not humiliate him. She did not lash out or recoil. She did something far more devastating. She let him down gently, clearly, and without ambiguity. In that moment, Daphne affirmed not only that she did not love him as he loved her, but that she never would. The cruelty of the moment was not in the words spoken, but in the calm certainty with which they were delivered. Carter was not rejected as a villain or a fool. He was rejected as a man who simply wanted more than was available. That distinction matters, because it leaves no enemy to fight. The wound Carter carries forward is not embarrassment, it is recognition. He understands with a lucidity that burns that he has been loving alone, that every emotional investment he made was unilateral, that the future he envisioned existed only because he kept imagining it. And worse, he realizes that the harder he tried to secure affection, the more diminished he appeared in Daphne's eyes. Love, he learns too late, cannot survive the optics of imbalance. The more someone reaches without being met, the more their desire reads as weakness rather than devotion. This is the point at which many characters on The Bold and the Beautiful spiral outward into rage, scandal, or self-destruction. Carter does something else. He spirals inward, and in that silence, something recalibrates. Carter Walton has spent his career navigating power through order, contracts, ethics, institutional balance. He believes in systems, in fairness, in the idea that rules, if followed precisely, can prevent chaos. Love disrupted that belief because it refused to behave like a system. It did not reward effort proportionally. It did not respect seniority, intention, or sacrifice. Daphne's refusal exposes that truth so starkly that Carter is forced to choose between grief and adaptation. He chooses adaptation. The shift is subtle at first. Carter tells himself he is simply regaining equilibrium, stepping back into the version of himself that commands respect rather than sympathy. He reminds himself that emotion, unchecked, compromises authority. That vulnerability, when unreciprocated, becomes liability. These are not lies, they are partial truths weaponized by hurt. Carter does not become cruel overnight. He becomes strategic. And strategy, when fueled by wounded pride, is infinitely more dangerous than open anger. The game changes when Carter reframes the narrative. If love cannot be returned, it can still be leveraged. If intimacy cannot be shared, it can still be used. Carter begins to see the emotional dynamics around him not as personal failures, but as resources. Daphne, in particular, becomes a symbol of lost ground he is determined to reclaim, not romantically, but structurally. He does not set out to destroy her. That would require admitting pain. Instead, he positions her quietly, professionally, as a variable within a larger power equation. This is where Carter's transformation becomes unsettling. He convinces himself that he is merely doing what others have always done, separating feeling from function. If Daphne's presence complicates his authority, he will recontextualize it. If her independence challenges his standing, he will neutralize it through process rather than confrontation. Carter does not need to punish Daphne. He only needs to reassert dominance in spaces that matter. Influence, decision-making, optics. In that framework, emotional sacrifice becomes collateral rather than cruelty. Daphne senses the shift long before it is visible. She notices the recalibration in Carter's tone. The way warmth is replaced by efficiency. Conversations that once felt open now feel managed. Where Carter once sought understanding, he now seeks alignment. Daphne realizes with unease that her rejection has not ended the story, it has rewritten it. She is no longer an object of affection, but she is not free either. She occupies a new, ambiguous position, that of a reminder Carter cannot afford to ignore. The tragedy is that Daphne never intended harm. Her choice was honest, ethical, and necessary. Yet in this world, honesty does not guarantee safety. By refusing Carter emotionally, she inadvertently challenged him symbolically. She exposed the limits of his influence in the one arena he believed immune to hierarchy. That exposure lingers like a stain Carter cannot scrub away. And stains, two men like Carter, demand correction. As weeks pass, Carter's maneuvers grow bolder, not overtly vindictive, but unmistakably self-serving. He aligns himself with initiatives that consolidate authority. He frames decisions as neutral while ensuring outcomes favor his position. He becomes indispensable again, not because he is beloved, but because he is efficient. Daphne watches as the man who once sought partnership now prioritizes leverage. She begins to understand that in refusing him emotionally, she may have unknowingly positioned herself as expendable. This is the darkest turn, when affection, once freely given, becomes currency. Carter tells himself he is not using Daphne, he is simply no longer protecting her. The distinction comforts him. It allows him to proceed without guilt. He convinces himself that power regained through strategy is cleaner than power begged for through vulnerability. And because his actions are framed as professional rather than personal, they escape scrutiny. No one can accuse Carter of revenge when everything he does is technically justified. Yet the cost is unmistakable. Carter's internal world hardens. He loses access to the very empathy that once defined him. He becomes respected but isolated, powerful but emotionally starved. The irony is cruel. In trying to escape the humiliation of unreturned love, he constructs a life where love has no safe entry point at all. Daphne, meanwhile, becomes the first visible casualty of this shift, not because Carter targets her, but because she stands closest to the origin of his transformation. In The Bold and the Beautiful, this is how villains are born, not through malice, but through rationalization. Carter does not wake up deciding to sacrifice Daphne. He arrives there incrementally, each choice defended as necessary, each compromise justified by the need to survive with dignity intact. By the time the line is crossed, it no longer feels like a line at all. The question looming over this arc is not whether Carter will fall further, but whether he will recognize the cost before the game consumes him entirely. Power gained through emotional suppression is notoriously difficult to relinquish, and Daphne, caught between compassion and self-preservation, must decide whether to confront the man Carter is becoming or remove herself before she is reduced to a footnote in his resurgence. This storyline endures because it is painfully human. It asks what happens when a good man is forced to confront the limits of love and chooses control over connection. It explores how rejection, even when handled with grace, can catalyze a transformation that reshapes not only one life, but the moral landscape around it. And as Carter Walton steps fully into a game where affection is leverage and vulnerability is weakness. The Bold and the Beautiful reminds us of a sobering truth. The most dangerous players are not those who never loved, but those who loved deeply and decided they would never be powerless again.